Hey guys, how's it going today? Welcome back for another video. And let me ask you something. Do you know what is objectively the best version of Dungeons & Dragons? The answer might surprise you. And hey, this time it's not just my opinion. But before we get into that, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already clicked that subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications, if you like what you see, please do so. We are up to almost 4,050 subs on the channel, and I am just so grateful for the outpouring of support from you guys. We're having a lot of fun here, so you should definitely stick around for the party. And before we get into today's article, of course, I want to remind everyone that this video is brought to you by Hellebarde Games. Hellebarde Games makes the modules they'd like to play, with offerings for OSR, Castles and Crusades, and 5th edition. No matter what rules are in use, old school is at the table. You can grab Hellebarde modules at DriveThruRPG, or you can pick them up directly from their website at hellebardegames.com. So let's go ahead and jump right into it today. This comes to us from CBR.com, which makes it doubly surprising that they have proclaimed 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons as the zenith of D&D. So let's take a look at this article, and this is by James Lynch. This is just a few days ago this dropped. And he writes, over the course of Dungeons & Dragons' nearly 50-year history, the game has undergone significant changes, resulting in many official iterations. Though the main game is now on its 5th edition, the current version draws in new players at an almost unprecedented speed, and the game is at an all-time high in terms of popularity. Though undoubtedly helped by popular streams and increased coverage of the TTRP genre, D&D 5e might not actually be the best version of the game to date. Well, I don't think I disagree with you, James, but let's continue on. In fact, none of the editions of the main game hold that particular crown. An older release under a slightly different name managed to find the perfect balance in mechanics and features, paving the way for later, more popular variations. This game is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and here's why it deserves some modern day attention. Now, I'm going to dispute that. I think that back then, 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was the main version of the game. But let's continue. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons features the best that D&D has to offer. A lovely shot from the episode Advanced Dungeons & Dragons from Community, which you can't watch. 3 years after the original Dungeons & Dragons was released in 1974, the game's producers elected to change how they structured their creation. D&D, as it was then, featured a very limited rule set and little guidance on how to run certain aspects of the game as a dungeon master. In light of this, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was created, and the 1st edition of this game remains the pinnacle of the franchise to date. The game features 6 base classes, including lost classes like the Magic User, with a further 5 subclasses that greatly expanded upon the initial offering of the early versions of D&D. Now, I am going to pause here for a second. There's a little bit, I think, that merits explanation. First of all, the Magic User is a lost class, and I know some people that have read this article and reported it back to me said, hey, this guy thinks Magic User was completely diluted. I guess now it's sorcerer, wizard, necromancer. It has been completely split and fragmented and diluted over several classes. So yes, I feel that it has been lost. Although I should point out that officially in original D&D, at least 3 of the subclasses that AD&D brought in were still in the core rules. The Paladin, the Assassin, and I believe the Monk were all in original D&D. I know that the assassin and the paladin were. The ranger came along, of course, in the strategic review, and then by the time AD&D rolled around, was made an official part. But let's go on. It certainly doesn't have as many separate classes as 5e, thank goodness, but there are enough to cover every type of potential player. Critically, it left the door open for players to really make their characters their own, with fewer dictations based on specialist choices like archetype or colleges in the relatively early game. Many options are still available for class specialization, but players can choose options without risking being disadvantaged in relative power. The overtuning of each class in 5e also means that their AD&D equivalents feel more suited to their individual roles, and having a group of the right makeup opens the door for true ingenuity. And of course, something I absolutely agree with, AD&D included the best modules ever put to paper. He writes, equally, the dungeon modules created to accompany this version of the game are some of the best ever made. From Keep on the Borderlands, which help guide players and new dungeon masters through their versed adventures, to Tomb of Horrors, a monstrously challenging foray into the crypt of a demi-lich and Greyhawk, these modules laid the foundation for everything that came later. Now, I know what a lot of you folks are going to say. He's talking about B2 Keep on the Borderlands. That's a basic D&D module. And later on, it was fully and officially a basic D&D module, but you have to remember, the module states it can be used with AD&D with very few adjustments. And indeed, the very first iteration of Keep on the Borderlands came out not for basic Dungeons & Dragons, but for introductory Dungeons & Dragons, edited by J. Eric Holmes, which was intended to dovetail into first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons before it was spun off into its own iteration of D&D, the basic line. So he's not wrong. He's not wrong here. Some of the more legendary creatures were also added to the game at this point, including Orcus, Tiamat, and Bahamut. Fewer monsters added in later editions of the game brought further originality, with almost all the true stalwarts of the genre included in the AD&D 1E Monster Manual. Everything had a purpose, and all needs were catered to without the game feeling bloated, confusing, or awash in overlapping content. AD&D 1E managed to strip back all the unnecessary features introduced into the game over the years while still retaining player freedom. Though there are extra spells and abilities in 5e, there is very little that players can do now that they couldn't do when the advanced version of the game was released in 1977. With a decent DM, almost any situation could be accounted for without the need to keep track of an inordinate amount of matrices for each class and character. With all the modules, handbooks, and manuals now out of print, many are available for free as online PDFs or via eBay for those looking to collect increasingly expensive originals. For those who dare to try, AD&D is the most rewarding TTRPG experience available today. And what can I say? I don't disagree with a single word of that. So I thank the author over at CBR for penning this awesome little piece. Although, again, I would mention, yes, many of the PDFs are free. They're also still available on drivethrurpg.com. You can get the core books printed on demand, a great raft of classic modules, settings like Greyhawk, the early Forgotten Realms setting, and so on, are all available as purchasable PDFs from DriveThruRPG. So you don't need to spend a fortune on eBay or hope that you can stumble on a used bookseller out in the wild who doesn't know what they have, as it were. But this is an awesome article, and this is the kind of thing that I would like to see more of. You know, I kind of started on this odyssey with you guys and the channel booming and everything all the way back almost exactly a month ago, when that awful hit piece was released by PBS NewsHour attacking classic D&D aficionados. And of course, Wizards of the Coast has never relented on their, the past is bad and you're horrible and it's prejudice and everything else attitudes. And I don't think they ever will. But an article like this really fills me with hope that it's not just us graybeard and gray-haired grognards out there who are still championing first edition, but as always, I want to know what you guys think, so please leave a comment below. Tell me if you agree with this or if you disagree with this. I want to hear from you, and I will do my best to respond. At this point, I'm like 1,000 responses in the weeds, and I try to catch them when I can, guys. But let me ask you this. Let me just put this to you. Would you guys like me to reach out to the author of this and see maybe if he'd like to come on the show as a guest and kind of expand on some of these points? Again, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications, as I said in the beginning. And I'll be back in just a little while with a review. That's right, a review of Heidi Gygax and Eric Garland's module, Till Death Us Do Part. So stick around for that. I'll see you guys. Peace.